At 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was a message from my daughter Sarah. Mum, I know you paid $280,000 for this house, but my mother-in-law doesn't want you at the Christmas dinner. I hope you understand. I read those words 3 times. Each time hurt more than the last. I didn't answer right away. I kept staring at the illuminated screen in the darkness, feeling something inside me break for the last time. At that hour of the morning, everything feels heavier. The silences hurt more. The truths we've been carrying for years become unbearable. I had paid $280,000 so my daughter and her husband could have a decent house. A house with a yard, with space for the children they would someday have, with big windows for the morning sun to stream in. A house where I, apparently, was no longer welcome. I got up slowly without turning on the light. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty street. The neighbors' Christmas lights twinkled faintly in the distance. I thought of all the times I had kept silent, all the times I had smiled when something hurt me, all the times I had said, "It's fine," when nothing was fine. My name is Eleanor Miller. I am 58 years old, and that morning of the 15th of December, something changed in me forever. I took my phone and typed a single word, understood. But what no one knew, not my daughter, nor her husband, nor especially that mother-in-law who had erased me from the Christmas table, was that the house was still in my name. I had paid every single cent. I had signed the deed. And that morning, tired of being invisible, of being used, of always being the one who gives in, I made a decision that would change everyone's Christmas. I wasn't going to that dinner, that was certain, but neither were they. No one was prepared for what was coming, because sometimes, when a woman gets tired, she doesn't yell, she simply acts, and the consequences are inevitable. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read it. 4 years ago, when Sarah introduced me to David, I was happy. My daughter had found a man who was educated, hard-working, with good manners. A civil engineer who spoke of projects and the future with that confidence that reassures a mother. I remember the afternoon they came to my house to tell me they were getting married. Sarah was wearing a light blue dress. She had that sparkle in her eyes that only true love can give. "Mum, I want you to meet David's family next Sunday," she said, squeezing my hand. I prepared turkey, mashed potatoes, and a green bean casserole that my own mother had taught me to make. I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth I saved for special occasions. They arrived on time. David, his father Mr. Harold, and her, Mrs. Carroll, a tall woman with perfectly styled hair, with that kind of elegance that is intimidating. She wore a pearl necklace and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Miller," she said, shaking my hand coldly. "What a cozy house." That word stuck with me. She didn't say pretty. She didn't say warm. She said cozy, like someone who means small without actually saying it. During the meal, Mrs. Carroll barely tasted the turkey. "Oh, I just have a sensitive stomach," she said, touching her chest. "I can't handle rich dishes." David ate with appetite. Mr. Harold complimented me on the casserole, but she looked at everything as if she were evaluating. The house, the furniture, me. When they left, Sarah hugged me at the door. "Aren't they wonderful, Mum?" I smiled and nodded. But something inside me had already noticed that look, that way of making me feel less. Still, I kept silent, because a mother does anything for her daughter's happiness, even swallowing the first warning signs. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for Sarah's dress, a gorgeous design she had seen in a boutique downtown. $5,000 that I took out of my savings without a second thought. Mrs. Carroll organized the reception at an elegant ballroom. Everything was impeccable. White flowers, gold lights, a dessert table like something out of a magazine. But when it was time for the thank yous, David only mentioned his parents. "Thank you, Mom, Dad, for giving us this unforgettable party." Sarah looked for me from the head table. I smiled and raised my glass. "It's fine, my love," I told her, moving my lips without a sound. But it wasn't fine, and I was starting to understand it. Months later, when Sarah and David had been married for 1 year, they invited me to lunch at their rented apartment. It was small, but they had decorated it with care. "Mum, we have to tell you something," Sarah said, taking David's hand. "We want to buy a house," he continued, "but we can't afford the full down payment." Sarah looked at me with those eyes I had known since she was a little girl. "Mum, do you think you could help us?" I had worked 32 years as an accountant in an imports company. I had saved every dollar with discipline. I had been living alone since my husband died, 10 years earlier. That money was for my old age, for my peace of mind, so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone. But when Sarah asked me, "How much do you need?" was all I said. While I'm telling all this, I'm thinking about where you might be listening to me. Write the name of your city in the comments, $280,000. That was the amount I took out of my savings. It wasn't everything I had, but it was most of it. The result of 32 years of waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, taking 2 buses to get to the office, working extra hours when necessary. The money that was going to give me peace when I could no longer work. The money that meant freedom. But when I saw Sarah's face when I told her yes, it was all worth it. Oh, I thought so. The house was in a quiet residential area, on the outskirts of the city. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a yard with a lemon tree, and a spacious kitchen with windows overlooking the backyard. It was perfect. The day we went to see it, Sarah walked through the empty rooms with her hands over her chest, smiling like a small child. "Our room will go here, Mum, and this bedroom here." She stopped in the smallest room, next to the window. "This one will be for you." I stood still. "For me?" "Of course, Mum," Sarah said, hugging me. "You're helping us with the house. It's only fair that you have your own space when you come to visit, or when you want to stay." David nodded from the hallway. "Of course, Mrs. Miller. This house is yours too." I felt my heart fill up. Maybe everything was going to be fine. Maybe this investment was not just money, but a place where I belonged too. We signed the papers at the notary's office at the end of March. I put my name as the principal title holder. Sarah and David were listed as beneficiaries, but legally the house was in my name. That's what my lawyer had advised me, an older man who had been doing my tax returns for years. "Ellie, if you're putting up that amount of money, protect yourself," he told me. "Keep the property in your name for at least 2 years. Then you can transfer it if you want. But for now, protect yourself." I nodded, although deep down I felt guilty for even thinking it. What kind of mother distrusts her own daughter? When I told Sarah that the house would temporarily be in my name, she didn't object. "That seems perfect, Mum. It's your money after all. When we can pay you back, we'll make the transfer." But that night, David called his mother. I was in Sarah's kitchen preparing coffee when I heard his voice in the living room. "Yes, Mum. Yes, Mrs. Miller is putting up the money, but the house is staying in her name." Silence. "No, Mum. It's not distrust. It's just that her lawyer recommended it." Another silence. "Yes, I know. But we can't say anything to her. Without her money, there's no house." I felt a chill. I went back to the living room with the coffee tray as if I hadn't heard anything, but something had already changed. Over the following months, I helped Sarah and David furnish the house. I bought the refrigerator, the washing machine, and paid half of the living room set. I also gave them a wooden dining room table that I found at an antique store. It was beautiful, big enough for 8 people. "So we can have family meals, my love," I told Sarah as the movers carried it in. She hugged me tightly. "You're the best mom in the world." The first time I went to stay in my room, I arrived one Friday afternoon with a small suitcase and a layer cake that I had made that morning. I rang the doorbell. Sarah opened the door, but she had a strange expression. "Mom, didn't you tell me you were coming?" "Yes, my love. I sent you a message yesterday." "Oh, I didn't see it. It's just that—" She looked inside. David invited his parents for dinner. And there she was, Mrs. Carroll, sitting in the living room that I had helped furnish, drinking tea from a porcelain cup. She looked me up and down. "Mrs. Miller, what a surprise." She didn't get up to greet me. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Carroll," I said, walking in with my suitcase. "Mum, you're staying in your room, right?" Sarah said, nervously. "It's just that Mrs. Carroll is already settled in the guest room." I froze. The guest room. The room Sarah had told me was for me. "Sure, my love," I said, with that smile that was already starting to hurt. "No problem." I went up to my room, but when I opened the door, I realized it was no longer empty like the last time. There were boxes piled against the wall, old clothes of David's hanging in the closet, an exercise bike in one corner. My room had become a storage room. I sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. "Don't cry, Ellie, don't cry." I went downstairs half an hour later with the cake in my hands. "I brought a layer cake," I said, trying to sound cheerful. Mrs. Carroll wrinkled her nose. "Oh, what a shame, Mrs. Miller. I brought a French lemon tart from a boutique bakery. We already put it in the refrigerator." David avoided my gaze. Sarah took the cake from my hands. "Thanks, Mum. We'll save it for tomorrow." But I knew they weren't going to eat it. During dinner, Mrs. Carroll talked non-stop about her social club, her travels, how expensive everything was. Mr. Harold nodded at every one of his wife's comments. David laughed at the appropriate moments. Sarah served the food in silence. And I was there, sitting at the table I had bought, in the house I had paid for, feeling invisible. At one point, Mrs. Carroll pointed to the curtains in the living room. "Sarah, my dear, those curtains are too plain. I know a divine store that sells some imported ones from Italy. I'll give them to you for Christmas." "Oh, mother-in-law, how sweet." "Thank you," Sarah said. "This house just has so much potential," Mrs. Carroll continued. "It just needs a few touches of good taste." Good taste. As if everything I had contributed didn't have it. I got up from the table. "Excuse me, my head hurts a little. I'm going to lie down." No one protested. I went up to my room, lay down on the quilt, and stared at the ceiling in silence. I didn't cry that night, but something inside me began to break, something that, with time, could no longer be repaired, because one can endure many things, but feeling invisible in the place one built oneself, that hurts in a way that has no name. And the worst of all's that it was just beginning. The following months were a succession of small injuries so subtle that at first I convinced myself I was exaggerating, that it was my imagination, that I was too sensitive. But the pain was real. Sarah started calling me less. Before, we talked every day, even if it was 10 minutes before bedtime. Now, 3, 4 days would go by without me hearing from her. When I called, sometimes she didn't answer. When she did answer, she was always in a hurry. Mum, I'll call you later. I'm with my mother-in-law at the supermarket. Mum, I can't right now. We're going out to lunch with David's parents. Mum, I'll tell you later. We're going to Mrs. Carroll's house to look at some fabrics for the throw pillows. Mrs. Carroll. Always Mrs. Carroll. One Saturday afternoon, I dared to ask her, My love, aren't we doing our Sunday coffees anymore? There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the phone. Oh, Mum, it's just that David and I go to brunch with his parents on Sundays. You know, it's a tradition in their family. I understand, I said, even though I didn't understand anything. What if I go with you one Sunday? Another silence. It's just that Mrs. Carroll is very particular about that, Mum. You know, it's her time with David. Her time with David. David was no longer just my daughter's husband. Now he was Mrs. Carroll's son, who just happened to be married to Sarah. It's fine, my love, don't worry, I said, with that voice that was starting to sound fake, even to me. I hung up and sat in my living room, looking at the photograph of Sarah at her graduation. She was 22 years old in that photo, wearing her navy blue gown and holding her business administration degree with a huge smile. I was next to her, hugging her. That day she had told me, Mum, everything I am is thanks to you. At what point had that changed? I decided I needed to make an effort. Maybe I was the one pulling away without realizing it. Maybe I needed to be more present, more flexible, more pleasant. So I started bringing them food every week. On Tuesdays, after work, I would prepare something special and drop it off. Chicken chili, meatballs in barbecue sauce, corn chowder, beef stew with vegetables, things I knew Sarah had loved since she was a child. The first few times she received the containers with joy. Oh, Mum, thank you, it smells delicious. But little by little her enthusiasm faded. One afternoon, when I arrived with a meatloaf that had taken me 3 hours to prepare, Sarah opened the door with a tired look. Mum, I already told you that you don't need to cook so much. Well, I like to do it, my love. Plus, I know you work hard, and this way you don't have to worry about dinner. It's just that Mrs. Carroll brings us food too, she said, lowering her voice, and our refrigerator is already full. I was left standing with the container in my hands. Do you want me to take it back? No, leave it. I'll find a spot for it. But I saw in her eyes that it was a bother, that my food, my effort, my love was a bother. I went in for a moment to leave the container in the kitchen, and there, in the refrigerator, I saw elegant glass containers with printed labels. Mrs. Carroll's risotto, Mrs. Carroll's Mediterranean salad, Mrs. Carroll's berry dessert. My meatloaf, in its faded plastic container, looked sad next to all that impeccable presentation. The meatloaf is really good, Mum, Sarah said behind me. Really? But her voice didn't sound convincing. I drove back to my house with a lump in my throat. I didn't cry. I was already learning not to cry. In October, Sarah had her birthday, 28 years old. I had planned everything weeks in advance. I reserved a restaurant she loved, the same one where we had celebrated her last 5 birthdays. I invited her 2 best friends from college, my sister Susan, and of course, David. I sent the digital invitation a week in advance. Sarah called me that same night. Mom, that's a sweet invitation, but it's just that the but hit me like a stone in the stomach. It's just that Mrs. Carroll already organized a surprise dinner for me at her house on the same day. The same day? Yes, she just didn't know you had already planned something. Sarah, I sent you the invitation a week ago. And we've been talking about this dinner for a month. I know, Mum, I know. But it's just that everything is already set. She invited David's family, hired a catering service, ordered a cake. I can't tell her no. And you can tell me no? The words came out before I could stop them. There was a long silence. Mum, it's not like that. Then what is it like, Sarah? You can cancel the restaurant. Mrs. Carroll has already paid for everything. I felt something break in my chest. You know what, my love? You're right. Go to your mother-in-law's dinner. I'll cancel the restaurant. Mum, don't be mad. I'm not mad, Sarah. I understand you perfectly. I hung up before she could reply. I cancelled the restaurant reservation. I lost the $100 deposit. I sent a message to my sister Susan and Sarah's friends. The dinner was cancelled. Last-minute change of plans. That night I sat in my dining room alone and took out the gift I had bought for Sarah. It was a silver bracelet with a heart-shaped charm. Inside the heart, engraved in small letters, it said, Mum and Daughter, Forever. I put it back in its velvet box, and I put it away in the drawer of my dresser, where I kept all the things that I no longer knew if they made sense. On Sarah's birthday, she sent me a photo of the dinner at Mrs. Carroll's house, a long table decorated with gold and white balloons, a 3-tiered cake with sugar flowers, David hugging Sarah, Mrs. Carroll posing next to them with a triumphant smile. The message said, I missed you, Mum, but it was beautiful. Thanks for understanding. I replied, Happy birthday, my love. May God bless you always. I didn't mention the cancelled dinner. I didn't mention the lost deposit. I didn't mention the stored gift. Because that's what mothers do, right? We swallow the pain, we smile, and we say everything is fine, even though something inside is dying. November arrived with an unusual cold. Sarah called me one Wednesday night. Mum, do you have plans for Christmas? My heart skipped a beat. Christmas, our tradition. Since Sarah was a little girl, we spent Christmas Eve together. We made mashed potatoes, punched the turkey, played carols. It was our time. Well, I was thinking we would spend it together, as always, I said, trying to sound casual. It's just that this year is going to be different, Mum. Different. That word again. Mrs. Carroll wants to have Christmas dinner at our house. She says she's getting older and going up the stairs at her house is hard for her, so we thought it would be nice to have it at the new house. Our house. The house I paid for. I understand, I said. And me? You're coming, of course. You're part of the family. I breathed a sigh of relief. That's fine, my love. I'll bring the mashed potatoes and the pumpkin pie, as always. Mum, it's just that Mrs. Carroll already has the whole menu planned. She's bringing everything. But I always make the Christmas mashed potatoes, Sarah. I know, Mum, but you know how she is. She likes everything to be a certain way. A certain way. Her way. What if I just bring the pie? Mum, honestly, don't worry. Just come and enjoy. You don't have to bring anything. You don't have to bring anything. Except that I was no longer welcome. Except that my place at that table was already being occupied by someone else. But I still didn't know it. I still thought that if I made myself smaller, more invisible, more obedient, I would still fit into my daughter's life. How wrong I was. I still wonder if I did the right thing by staying quiet for so long. And you? What would you have done in my place? December arrived with that air of hope that Christmas brings. The streets filled with lights, the stores played carols, and I tried to convince myself that everything was going to be fine, that Christmas dinner at Sarah's house would be a new beginning, that Mrs. Carroll and I could get along better if I made the effort, That maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would unite us as a family. How naive I was. On the 10th of December, I went to the mall to buy Sarah's Christmas gift. I walked through the bright aisles, seeing young couples carrying bags, children pointing at toys, families taking photos next to the giant tree at the entrance. I felt terribly alone, but I kept walking. I went into an elegant jewelry store. There I found a set of silver earrings and a necklace with blue stones. Sarah had always loved blue. "It's for my daughter," I told the saleswoman. "What a beautiful gift," she replied, smiling. "She's sure to love it." I paid $230, money that was already harder for me to put together, because my savings were getting smaller and smaller. But I didn't care. I still believed that my love could be bought with presents. That same afternoon, while having coffee in the food court, my phone rang. It was my sister Susan. "Ellie, are you busy?" "No, I'm at the mall. Is something wrong?" "I need to tell you something, and I don't know if I should, but I think you have the right to know." My heart raced. "What is it, Susan?" "Last night I went to the supermarket and saw Sarah with Mrs. Carroll." "And?" "They were in the Christmas decorations aisle. I was going to say hello, but I heard what they were talking about." Susan paused. "What did you hear?" "Mrs. Carroll was telling Sarah that your presence at Christmas dinner made her feel uncomfortable." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. "What?" "Yes, Ellie," she said. "Sarah, my dear, I understand she's your mum, but the truth is I don't feel comfortable with her at family gatherings. She's a woman, how do I say it? Very plain. She doesn't fit in with our environment." I closed my eyes. Plain. That word cut through me like a knife. "And what did Sarah say?" I asked, although I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Susan sighed. "Sarah didn't defend you, Ellie. She stayed quiet. And then she said, 'I know, mother-in-law, but I can't tell her not to come. She's my mum, but I can't tell her not to come,' as if I were an obligation, as if my presence were a burden. Are you there, Ellie?" "Yes, I'm here. I'm so sorry, sister, but I thought you should know." "Thanks, Susan." I hung up. I stayed sitting at that table in the food court, surrounded by Christmas laughter, with the coffee getting cold in front of me. And for the first time in months, I felt something different from pain. I felt rage. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned in bed, reviewing every conversation, every gesture, every word I had ignored. The "I'll call you later" that never came. The "you don't need to come" wrapped in false smiles. The "Mrs. Carroll already organized it" that erased me from every plan. My daughter was pushing me away, and I had been too cowardly to see it. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up and turned on my computer. I opened my email and looked for the house documents, the deed, the contract, the proof of transfer for the $280,000. Everything was in my name. I was the legal owner of that house. Sarah and David were just residents. Residents who, according to the contract, had the obligation to make me a participant in the family use of the property. My lawyer had included that clause. I hadn't even given it importance at the time. But now it made perfect sense. I printed the documents and put them in a folder. I didn't know why. I just knew I needed to keep them close. The following days were strange. Sarah called me a couple of times, as always, with that hurried voice, but I no longer listened the same way. Now I noticed every uncomfortable pause, every change of subject when I mentioned Christmas dinner, every "I have to go" that came too quickly. On the 14th of December, I decided to stop by the house without announcing myself. I needed to see my daughter. I needed to look her in the eyes and ask her if what Susan had heard was true. I rang the doorbell at 11 o'clock in the morning. David opened the door, wearing sweatpants and looking surprised. Mrs. Miller, good morning. We didn't know you were coming. I came to see Sarah. Is she here? Yes, she's upstairs. Come in. I went into the house. My house. The living room was different. They had put up new curtains, elegant beige ones, the ones Mrs. Carroll had promised to give them. The couch I had helped buy was covered with embroidered throw pillows that I had never seen. On the mantelpiece, there was a large picture frame. I walked closer. It was a family photo. David, Sarah, Mr. Harold, Mrs. Carroll, all smiling in front of the Christmas tree at Mrs. Carroll's house. I looked for my photo, the photo of the two of us at her graduation, the photo that used to be on that same mantelpiece. It was gone. Ellie? I turned around. Sarah was coming down the stairs, in pajamas, with messy hair. Mum, is something wrong? I came to see you, my love. Can't I come to see you? Of course you can. It's just that you should have let me know. Why, Sarah? So you could tell me you're busy? She fell silent. We sat in the living room, uncomfortable, like two strangers. Mum, are you okay? You seem off. Off? Yes, like angry. I took a deep breath. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me truthfully. She tensed up. What is it? Did Mrs. Carroll tell you that she doesn't want me to go to Christmas dinner? The colour drained from her face. Who told you that? Sarah, just answer. Is it true? She bit her lip. She looked toward the stairs, where David had discreetly disappeared. Mum, it's complicated. No, Sarah, it's not complicated. It's a simple question. Yes or no? She has her ideas, Mum. You know how she is. She thinks family gatherings should be a certain way. A certain way? What does that mean? Mum, please don't do this to me. Do what to you, Sarah? Ask you if I still have a place in your life. Of course you have a place. Then why are you excluding me from your Christmas? I'm not excluding you. Then what's happening? Sarah got up from the couch, frustrated. Mum, you just don't understand. Mrs. Carroll is important to David, and I can't be fighting with her. She's very sensitive. If I do something she doesn't like, she gets mad and stops talking to us for weeks, and David suffers. And I suffer watching David suffer. And me? Don't I matter? You're my mum. You'll always be there. I'll always be there, even when you erase me from your photos, even when you reject my food, even when you cancel our traditions. Don't be dramatic. Those words felt like a slap. Dramatic? Yes, Mum. You're making a problem out of something that isn't one. Sarah, that woman doesn't want me to go to Christmas dinner in the house that I paid for. Oh, Mum, enough. It's always the same. You always mention the money. Because it's the truth. Well, if it bothers you so much, take your damn money. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah covered her mouth, regretful. Mum, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I got up slowly. I picked up my purse. No, Sarah, you're right. Mum, don't mind me. I'm stressed. Don't worry, my love. I understand everything now. I walked toward the door. Mum, wait. I didn't stop. I left that house. I got into my car, and I drove to my apartment with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I arrived, I sat in my dining room and took out my phone. I found my lawyer's contact, and I typed. Mr. Baker, I need urgent advice regarding the property in my name. Can you see me tomorrow? The answer came in 5 minutes. Of course, Ellie. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning at my office. Is everything all right? I didn't reply. Because no, nothing was all right. And I had just realized that I had been swallowing a pain that no longer fit in my chest for months. But something had changed. That pain was turning into clarity. And clarity, sometimes, is the most dangerous thing a woman who has been underestimated for too long can possess. The next morning, I woke up at 6 o'clock. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Sarah's voice. Well, if it bothers you so much, take your damn money. Those words had pierced my soul, not because of the anger, but because of the truth they contained. For my daughter, my sacrifice had become a reproach, my love, a burden, and I had become an annoyance. I made myself a coffee that I couldn't finish. I took a shower automatically. I put on a grey suit that I hadn't worn in months. I needed to feel strong. I needed to feel dignified, even though I was broken inside. At 9:30, I was at Mr. Baker's office. He greeted me with the same kindness as always. He was a man in his 60s, grey-haired, with thick glasses and that seriousness that inspires confidence. Ellie, come in. Come in. Have a seat. Can I offer you a coffee? No, thank you, Mr. Baker. I already had one at home. Very well. Tell me, what brings you here? Your message yesterday sounded urgent. I took out the folder with the house documents. I placed them on his desk. Mr. Baker, I need you to explain exactly what my rights are to this property. He opened the folder and began to review the papers carefully. Several minutes passed in silence. The only sound was the rustling of the pages as he turned them. Finally, he took off his glasses and looked at me. Ellie, you are the absolute legal owner of this property. Your name appears as the sole title holder on the deed. Sarah and David have no ownership rights. They are only listed as authorized residents. What exactly does that mean? It means that you can do whatever you deem appropriate with this house. You can sell it, rent it, or ask them to vacate. Just like that? Just like that. You put up the money, you signed. The house is yours. I felt a shiver. And them? Can't they do anything? No, unless you signed some private agreement promising them the property, which I don't see here. Is there anything like that? No, only verbal agreements. I told them that one day I would transfer it to them when they could pay me back. Are there witnesses to that? Only the three of us. Then there is nothing legally binding. Ellie, that house is yours to do with as you wish. I remained silent, processing his words. Mr. Baker, can I sell it without their consent? Yes. Can I ask them to leave? Yes. You just need to give them formal notice. Since they are there without paying rent and without a contract, you can request an eviction with 30 days' notice. 30 days. And what if I wanted to sell the house immediately? He looked at me intently. Is the situation that serious, Ellie? I didn't answer with words, but my eyes said it all. He sighed. Look, legally you can, but I understand this is your daughter. I would recommend you think about it carefully. These decisions have emotional consequences that go beyond the legal. There are no more emotions to protect, Mr. Baker. That has been made very clear to me. Do you want me to prepare the sales documents? I was silent. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to sell my daughter's house? I thought of Sarah, of her happy face the day she first saw that house, of her decorating plans, of her dreams of starting a family there. But then I thought of the family photo from which I had been excluded, of the room that had become a storage room, of the rejected mashed potatoes, of the cancelled birthday dinner, of the take your damn money. And above all, I thought of Christmas, of the dinner where I was not welcome, in the house I paid for, at the table I bought, where Mrs. Carroll would be the queen, and I wouldn't even have a place. "Yes, Mr. Baker," I finally said. "Prepare the documents." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He nodded slowly. "Very well. Do you want to list it with an agency, or do you know an interested buyer?" "I want to sell it as quickly as possible." "How long would that take?" "If we look for a cash buyer, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. There are investors who constantly look for properties like this." 3 or 4 weeks. That would take us to the end of December. "Mr. Baker, what's today's date?" "The 15th of December. I did the math in my head. "Would it be possible to have the sale closed by the 24th of December? He looked at me surprised. "That's very little time, Ellie. But if we find the right buyer and you are willing to lower the price a little to speed things up, perhaps yes." "How much would I have to lower it?" "Instead of asking $300,000, you could offer it for $270,000. That's $30,000 less, but the sale would be immediate." $30,000 less. Even so, I would recover almost all my money, and more importantly, I would recover my dignity. "Do it, Mr. Baker. Sell it for $270,000, but I need the transaction to be closed on the 24th of December, not a day later." "The 24th of December? Ellie, that's Christmas Eve." "I know perfectly well." We looked at each other in silence. He understood. "All right. I'll do my best. I know some investors who might be interested. I'll let them know it's a cash opportunity. Negotiable price. Urgent transaction." "Perfect. And the eviction notice?" "Prepare that too, but don't deliver it yet. I will let you know when." "When do you plan to deliver it?" I smiled for the first time in days. A sad smile, but a smile. "The afternoon of the 24th of December, Mr. Baker, just before Christmas dinner." He let out a long sigh. "Ellie, are you absolutely sure about this? There's no turning back." "I've been making myself small for months to fit into my daughter's life, Mr. Baker. And you know what I discovered? That no matter how small I make myself, I'm never going to be enough for them. So I decided something better." "What is that?" "I decided to reclaim my size." I left that office with the folder under my arm and a strange weight in my chest. It wasn't relief, nor was it sadness. It was clarity. That cold, sharp clarity that comes when you finally understand that they don't love you the way you love, that they don't value you the way you value. And that sacrifice, when it's not reciprocated, becomes humiliation. The following days were odd. Sarah didn't call me after our fight. I didn't call her either. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to make the first move. But neither of us did. Mr. Baker called me on the 18th of December. "Ellie, I have good news. I found a buyer." My heart jumped. "That fast?" "Yes. It's an investor who has a fund to buy properties in that area. He was very interested because the house is in excellent condition. He's offering $265,000 cash, $5,000 less than we were asking. But the transaction can close on the 23rd of December. $265,000. I had invested $280,000. I would lose $15,000, but I would recover my peace." "I accept." "Are you sure? We could look for someone to pay the $270,000. "No, Mr. Baker, I accept. I want to close this immediately." "Very well. I'll prepare everything. The signing of the transaction will be on the 23rd of December at 10 o'clock in the morning. Does that work for you?" "Perfect. And the eviction notice?" I want it ready to be delivered on the 24th in the afternoon, around 6 o'clock in the evening. Understood. I'll have it ready. I hung up. I sat in my dining room, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. But not out of sadness. I cried out of liberation, because I was going to do something I had never done in my life. I was going to choose myself. That night, Sarah finally sent me a message. Mum, sorry about the other day. I was stressed. You're coming to Christmas dinner, right? We expect you at 7 o'clock in the evening on the 24th. I read the message 3 times. We expect you. Not I want you there. Not it's not the same without you. Just, we expect you. Like someone expecting the plumber, the cable guy, the person who provides a service, I replied. Sure, my love, I'll be there, but I wasn't going to be there. Not in the way she expected. On the 20th of December, I went to the bank and requested a cashier's check for the amount of the sale. $265,000. The employee looked at me curiously. That's a lot of money, ma'am. Are you sure you want it in a cashier's check? Completely sure. For what date do you need the document? For the 23rd of December. Perfect. You'll have it here. On the 21st of December, Susan called me. Ellie, are you going to Sarah's Christmas dinner? Yes, I'm going to go. Really? I thought after everything that happened. Susan, I'm going to ask you something. Don't ask me questions. Just trust me. You're scaring me. Don't be scared. Just things are going to happen. And I need you to know that I'm fine, that I'm doing the right thing. What things are going to happen? You'll see. I love you, sister. I love you too, Ellie. But I'm worried about you. Don't worry. For the first time in a long time, I know exactly what I'm doing. On the 22nd of December, I packed the things I had in my room at Sarah's house. It wasn't much. A few changes of clothes I had left there, a couple of books, a photo of my husband that I had put on the nightstand. I put everything in a small bag. And when I left that room, I knew I would never step inside it again. On the 23rd of December, I arrived at Mr. Baker's office at 9:30 in the morning. The buyer was already there. He was a young man, about 35 years old, impeccable suit, leather briefcase. Mrs. Miller, a pleasure. I'm Robert Stevens, representative of the Bahio Real Estate Fund. We shook hands. The pleasure is mine. It's a beautiful property. We reviewed it last week. It's in excellent condition. Thank you. Mr. Baker placed the documents on the table. Very well. Here we have the deed of sale, Mrs. Miller. You are relinquishing all rights to the property located at Maple Street, number 347, to the Bahio Real Estate Fund for the amount of $265,000. Do you agree? I agree. Mr. Stevens, does your representative accept the terms? Yes, we accept. Perfect. Proceed to sign. I signed every page. My hand didn't tremble. Not once. When I finished, Mr. Stevens handed me the cashier's check. Here you are, Mrs. Miller, $265,000. I took the check. I looked at it. It was a simple piece of paper, but it represented my freedom. And when do you take possession of the house? Legally, from this moment on, but I understand that the current occupants need time to vacate. When do you think they can leave the property? I looked at Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, does the eviction notice give them 30 days? That's right. Then they have until the 24th of January. Mr. Stevens nodded. Perfect. That gives us time to plan the renovations. We're going to convert it into an executive rental house. An executive rental house. It wasn't even going to be Sarah's in any sense anymore. It was going to belong to strangers. And for some reason, That seemed perfect to me. I left that office with the check in my purse and the eviction notice in a manila folder. I went straight to the bank and deposited the check. $265,000. It wasn't everything I had invested, but it was enough. That afternoon, I sat in my living room and wrote a letter, not to Sarah, but to myself. Dear Ellie, today you sold the house you bought for your daughter. Today you recovered the money you gave with love. Today you chose your dignity over their comfort. And it's okay, you are not a bad mother. You are a woman who finally understood that love is not begged for, that sacrifice without reciprocity is called abuse, and that sometimes the most loving decision you can make is to walk away. Tomorrow will be a difficult day, but it will be the first day of the rest of your life. And that life finally belongs only to you. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer of my dresser, next to the birthday gift I never gave Sarah, next to the bracelet that said, Mum and Daughter Forever, because forever had turned out to be a promise only I was keeping. I went to bed early that night. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve, the day everything would change, the day I would stop being invisible. And although I knew it would hurt, I also knew that I would heal, because there are pains that cure. And this one was one of them. I woke up on the 24th of December at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had slept barely 3 hours, but it wasn't the insomnia of anguish. It was the vigilance of someone who is about to cross a bridge of no return. I stayed lying in the darkness, listening to the silence of my apartment. On other Christmases, at this hour, I would already be in the kitchen, preparing the turkey stuffing, chopping the vegetables for the side dishes, putting the cranberry sauce on the stove with cinnamon and orange, those aromas that filled the whole house, and that meant home, family, love. But this year, everything was different. I got up slowly and went to the kitchen. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city wake up. The first lights of dawn painted the sky pale orange. It was a beautiful day. Ironic, I thought. The most painful day of my life. And the sky was clear. At 8 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I hesitated whether to answer. Finally, I slid my finger across the screen. Hello, Mum. Good morning. How did you wake up? Her voice sounded cheerful, falsely cheerful. Fine, my love. And you? Oh, Mum, I'm running around like crazy here. Mrs. Carroll arrived early with everything for dinner. She brought turkey, ham, salads, desserts. She even hired a lady to serve. Everything is going to be beautiful. A lady to serve in the house I paid for, with the money I earned, while I was treated like a third-class guest. That's great, my love. What time are you getting here, Mum? Dinner is at 7, but you can come earlier if you want to help set the table. Help set the table. They wouldn't even let me organize anything, just help. I'm going to get there at 6:30, Sarah. Perfect, Mum. See you then. I love you. I love you too, my love. I hung up, and I kept looking at the phone in my hand. I love you. When had that phrase become a white lie? When did it stop meaning I value you, I respect you, I include you? When did it become just an empty word said out of habit? At 10 o'clock in the morning, I went to Mr. Baker's office. He was waiting for me. Ellie, good morning. Ready? Ready? He handed me a manila envelope. Inside was the eviction notice, printed on official paper, with my signature, with the lawyer's signature, with the corresponding seals. By means of this document, the occupants of the property located at Maple Street, number 347, are notified that they must vacate the premises within a maximum period of 30 calendar days from the date of receipt of this document, due to the fact that the property has been sold to a third party. The legal owner, Mrs. Eleanor Miller, exercising her full right, has decided to transfer the title of said property. I read the entire document. Every word weighed on me, but it also freed me. Are you sure you want to deliver it today? The lawyer asked once more. Completely sure. Ellie, they are going to react badly. You know that, right? I know. They are going to say things. They are going to be furious. They are going to... I know, Mr. Baker. I know exactly what is going to happen. And you still want to do it? Especially because of that, he sighed. You are a very brave woman, Ellie. I'm not brave, Mr. Baker. I'm just tired. I put the envelope in my purse. I left there and went to church. I am not a very religious woman, but in the most important moments of my life, I have always gone to church. I walked into the empty sanctuary. The candlelight flickered softly. There was a huge nativity scene next to the altar. Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, the shepherds, the wise men in the distance, a family. I sat on a back pew and closed my eyes. I didn't pray, I just breathed, and in that silence I found something similar to peace. Forgive me, God, I whispered. If this is wrong, forgive me, but I can't continue like this anymore. I didn't wait for an answer, because I knew that the only answer that mattered was in my heart, and my heart had already decided. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I returned to my apartment. I took a calm shower. I put on a navy blue dress that I had always liked. I put on light makeup. I carefully styled my hair. I put on the silver earrings that my husband had given me on our last anniversary before he died. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I recognized myself. There I was, Eleanor Miller, 58 years old, accountant, widow, mother, but above all, woman, with dignity, with courage, with the right to be respected. I picked up my purse. Inside was the manila envelope with the eviction notice, and I left my apartment at 6 o'clock in the evening, the day of my death. 20 minutes in which I reviewed my whole life, the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the extra jobs, the savings put away dollar by dollar, everything. I had done everything for her. And now I was about to take it away, not for revenge, but for survival. I arrived at Maple Street at 6:25. The street was lit up with Christmas lights. The houses shone with decorations. Carols could be heard in the distance. Happy families celebrating. I parked my car in front of the house that was no longer mine, the house that would no longer be Sarah's either. I took 3 deep breaths, and I got out of the car with my purse in my hand. I rang the doorbell. David opened the door. He was wearing a red sweater with an embroidered reindeer, big smile, wine glass in hand. Mrs. Miller, Merry Christmas. Come in, come in. I walked in. The house smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. There was a huge Christmas tree in the living room, decorated with gold ornaments and white lights. The dining room table was set with a white linen tablecloth, porcelain dinnerware, crystal glasses. There were 6 chairs, not 7. 6. I counted mentally. Sarah, David, Mr. Harold, Mrs. Carroll, and the other 2? Mum, you're here, Sarah said, coming out of the kitchen. She was wearing an emerald green dress. She looked beautiful, happy. Merry Christmas, my love, I said, hugging her. She returned the hug, but it was a short, awkward hug. Come, I want to introduce you to someone, she said, taking my hand. She led me to the living room. There was Mrs. Carroll sitting on the main couch, as if she were the owner of the house. She was wearing a wine-colored dress, a pearl necklace, a perfect hairstyle. Next to her was a young couple I didn't know. "Mom, this is Christopher and Jessica, David's cousins. They came from Chicago." Ah, the other two chairs. "Nice to meet you," I said, shaking their hands. "The pleasure is ours, Ma'am," Christopher replied. Mrs. Carroll looked me up and down. "Mrs. Miller, how punctual. Sit down, sit down. Would you like something to drink?" She didn't get up to greet me. She didn't even shake my hand. "No, thank you. I'm fine." I sat in an individual chair, away from the group. Mr. Harold arrived from the patio with another glass of wine. "Ah, Mrs. Miller. Good evening. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Mr. Harold." And there I was, sitting in the living room of the house I bought, surrounded by my son-in-law's family, while my daughter ran back and forth, serving canapes that Mrs. Carroll had brought. Invisible, uncomfortable, out of place. 30 minutes of superficial conversation passed. Christopher and Jessica talked about their trip. Mr. Harold commented on the weather. Mrs. Carroll narrated anecdotes from her European vacation. David laughed at the appropriate moments. Sarah nodded at everything her mother-in-law said. And me? I was there. But I wasn't there. At 7 o'clock sharp, Sarah announced, "Dinner is ready. Please come to the dining room." Everyone stood up. I did too. We walked toward the table. Mrs. Carroll sat at the head of the table, like the matriarch, like the queen, David to her right, Sarah to her left, Mr. Harold next to David, Christopher and Jessica on the other side. And me? I was left at the other head of the table, alone, at the opposite end of the table, miles away from my daughter. I sat down slowly, and at that moment, something inside me finished breaking. David brought the turkey, Sarah brought the side dishes. Mrs. Carroll raised her glass. "Family, before we begin, I want to make a toast." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, although my hand was trembling. "I want to thank God for this beautiful family we have formed, for my son David, who fills me with pride every day, for Sarah, who is like the daughter I always dreamed of having, for this wonderful house where we are gathered today, and for this perfect moment. Cheers! Cheers!" Everyone shouted. They clinked their glasses. They smiled. They toasted. And I set my glass down on the table without drinking, because I had just heard the only thing I needed to hear. For this wonderful house. The house she hadn't paid for. The house where I wasn't welcome. The house that in 30 minutes would no longer be theirs. I looked at Sarah. She was laughing at something Christopher had said. Happy, carefree, oblivious to everything, oblivious to me. I got up from the table. "Excuse me," I said. No one looked up at me. No one asked if I was okay. I walked toward the kitchen. I took out my phone and sent a message to Mr. Baker. "Proceed." He replied immediately. "Understood. In 15 minutes." I put my phone away. I returned to the dining room. I sat back in my seat. And I waited. They ate. They laughed. They told stories. Mrs. Carroll talked non-stop. David listened, captivated. Sarah poured more wine. And me? I just waited. At 7:30, the doorbell rang. David got up. "Are we expecting someone else?" "No," Sarah said, confused. He went to open the door. I heard voices at the entrance. Seconds later, David returned, pale. "Sarah, there's someone who wants to talk to you." Sarah got up, puzzled. "Who is it? Is it a process server?" Silence fell over the table like a slab of concrete. Sarah left the room, I remained seated, calm, breathing. Mrs. Carroll frowned. A process server? On Christmas Eve? What disrespect. 2 eternal minutes passed. Then I heard Sarah scream. What? We all got up from the table. We ran to the entrance. Sarah was at the door with an open envelope in her hands. Her face was distraught, white, trembling. David read the document over her shoulder. It can't be. It can't be. What's wrong? Mr. Harold asked. Sarah turned to me. Her eyes were full of tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of fury. Did you do this? Everyone looked at me. I held her gaze. Yes, Sarah, I did this. You sold the house. Yes. How could you? Because it's my house, Sarah. It always was. But we live here. You lived here. You have 30 days to vacate. David took a step toward me. Mrs. Miller, this is a mistake, right? You can't do this. You promised us. I didn't promise you anything, David. I told you that one day I might transfer the house to you, but that day never came. Mrs. Carroll stepped forward. Her face was red with indignation. This is an abuse, an injustice. You can't leave my son homeless. I looked her directly in the eyes. Your son is not homeless, Mrs. Carroll. Your son has 30 days to find another place, and he has a mother who boasts so much about her resources that I'm sure she can help him. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Sarah came up to me, trembling. Mum, why? Why are you doing this to us? Are you really asking me that, Sarah? Because you made it very clear to me that I had no place in your life, because you excluded me from your table, because you rejected my love again and again, because you chose this woman, I pointed to Mrs. Carroll, over your own mother. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, Sarah, where were my mashed potatoes tonight? Where was my pumpkin pie? Where was my place at this dinner? She fell silent. Exactly, there was no place for me, but there was a place for all of them. Because you don't accept David's family. No, Sarah, because David's family doesn't accept me, and you allowed it. Mrs. Carroll intervened. You are a resentful and bitter woman. No, Mrs. Carroll, I am a woman who finally learned to value herself. You ruined Christmas, I smiled sadly. My Christmas was already ruined from the moment your daughter-in-law sent me a message saying that you didn't want me here. Sarah turned pale. How? How did you know that? Because I wasn't the only one who overheard your conversation at the supermarket, my love, Mrs. Carroll looked at Sarah furiously. You said that in public. I, Sarah, didn't know anyone was listening to us. I approached my daughter. She backed away. Sarah, I gave you everything. My money, my time, my love. And you gave me crumbs. You made me feel invisible. You made me feel like I was the one who was wrong for expecting respect. Mum, I never… Yes, you did. And it's fine. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just… tired. I picked up my purse. You have until the 24th of January. The new owner has already paid. The papers are signed. There's no turning back. Mum, you can't just leave like this. Of course I can. I walked toward the door. Sarah followed me. Mum, please, can we talk? Can we fix this? I stopped. I turned to look at her. You know what the saddest thing is, Sarah? That I would have given anything to hear you say those words 2 months ago. But now it's too late. It's never too late, Mum. For some things it is. Merry Christmas, my love. I left that house. I closed the door behind me, and I heard the yelling that remained inside, the arguments, the crying, the chaos. I got into my car. I drove away. And I drove away, without looking back. Because if I looked back, maybe I would have regretted it. And I couldn't regret it. Not now. Not after finally having found my own voice. I drove aimlessly for 1 hour. The streets were empty. Everyone was home celebrating, families gathered, full tables, hugs, laughter. And I was alone in my car, with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. But I wasn't crying. I still wasn't crying, because if I started crying, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop. Finally, I stopped at an overlook on the outskirts of the city. From there, the whole city was visible, illuminated. Thousands of lights flickering in the darkness. Each light was a house. Each house, a family. Each family, a story. I turned off the engine. I sat in the silence. And there, in that absolute solitude, I finally breathed. I really breathed. For the first time in months, I felt my lungs fill completely. There was no one to please, no one to smile falsely for, no one to make me feel small. Just me. Me and my decision. I took out my phone. I had 15 missed calls from Sarah, 8 messages from David, 3 messages from unknown numbers, 1 from Susan. I opened Susan's first. "Ellie, are you okay?" Sarah called me crying. She told me everything. I don't know what to say. Just take care. "I love you, sister," I replied. "I'm fine. Better than ever. Don't worry about me." Then I opened David's messages. "Mrs. Miller, please, can we talk? Sarah is devastated. This is very cruel of you. I didn't think you were capable of something like this. At least give us more time. My mum is right. You are a very harsh woman. Sarah won't stop crying. How are you going to sleep tonight knowing what you did?" I read every message without feeling anything. Not guilt, not regret, just clarity. Finally, I opened Sarah's messages. "Mum, answer me, please. Mum, I need to talk to you. I can't believe you did this to me. How could you ruin our Christmas?" David is furious. "Mrs. Carroll says you are a horrible person." You know what? She's right. You're selfish. You only think about yourself. You never cared about my happiness. It was always about the money. I wish Dad were alive to see what you've become. That last message hit me like a punch to the stomach. She mentioned my husband, the man who loved me, the man who respected me, the man who valued me, and she used him as a weapon. I closed my eyes. I took 3 deep breaths and wrote my reply. "Sarah, I am only going to answer you once. Then I am going to turn off my phone. I didn't ruin your Christmas. Your Christmas was already ruined when you decided that I was not welcome in it. I am not selfish. I am a woman who finally understood that self-love is not selfishness. Yes, I thought about myself for the first time, in a long time, and I'm not going to apologize for that. And about your dad. Your dad would be proud of me, because he taught me that respect is the foundation of love. And you forgot that. I love you, Sarah. I will always love you. But I will no longer allow you to treat me as if I were invisible. When you are ready to talk truthfully, without yelling, without accusations, without your mother-in-law involved, I will be there. But not before. Merry Christmas." I sent the message, I turned off my phone, and I put it in the glove compartment. I stayed at that overlook until 11 o'clock at night, watching the city lights, thinking about everything. The years I had invested being a mother, the sacrifices I had made, the times I had swallowed the pain, the times I had said, "It's fine," when nothing was fine. And I realized something. something that filled me with a strange peace. I had done the right thing, not to hurt her, but to save myself. Because if I had continued like this, 1 more year, 2 more years, 5 more years, I would have ended up a shadow, a ghost, someone who exists only to serve. And that wasn't life. I returned to my apartment close to midnight. The streets were still empty. I walked up the stairs slowly. I opened my door, and I entered my space. My small 2-bedroom apartment, without luxuries, without magazine decorations, but mine, completely mine. I took off my shoes. I took off my dress. I put on my most comfortable pajamas, and I made myself chamomile tea. I sat on my armchair, and for the first time, all night, I cried. I cried for the daughter I had lost. I cried for the relationship that was broken. I cried for the dreams that would never come true. I cried for the Christmas I had always imagined and would never have again. But I also cried from relief, because I no longer had to pretend. I no longer had to smile when I was hurting. I no longer had to make myself small to fit into places where I wasn't wanted. I cried until I had no more tears, and when I finished, I felt empty, but also light, as if a 20-year weight had been lifted. I lay down in my bed. I looked at the ceiling, and I whispered in the darkness, "Merry Christmas, Ellie. You did it. You survived." And I fell asleep. For the first time in months, I fell asleep in peace. The following days were strange. I didn't turn on my phone. I didn't answer calls. I didn't open messages. I simply existed. I read books I had been meaning to read for years. I watched movies I had always wanted to see. I walked in the park. I had coffee at a quiet cafe. I breathed, without rush, without guilt, without fear. On the 27th of December, Susan came to visit me. She knocked softly on the door. I opened it. She looked at me with those eyes full of worry that only a sister can have. "Can I come in?" Of course. We went in. I poured her coffee. We sat in the living room. "How are you?" she asked. "Fine." "Ellie, you don't have to pretend with me." "I'm not pretending, Susan. I really am fine." She looked at me intently. "Sarah has called me every day. She's devastated." "I know. She says you made a terrible mistake." "It wasn't a mistake." "She says you ruined her life." "I didn't ruin her life. I just took back mine." Susan sighed. "Ellie, is there really no way to fix this?" "Fix it how, Susan? By giving them back the house? By apologizing for defending myself? By becoming invisible again?" "It's not that." "Then what is it?" She fell silent. "Susan, let me ask you something. If you had been in my place, what would you have done?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. Tell me the truth." She lowered her gaze. "Probably the same thing you did." "See?" "But she's your daughter, Ellie." "I know. And precisely because she's my daughter, this hurts me so much. But also, precisely because she's my daughter, I couldn't keep allowing her to treat me that way. And if she never forgives you?" That question pierced me. I was quiet for a moment. "Then I will live with that. But at least I will live with dignity." Susan took my hand. "You are stronger than I thought." "I'm not strong, Susan. I'm just tired of being weak." She stayed with me all afternoon. We talked about other things, about childhood, about our parents, about summers at our grandparents' ranch, about when life was simple, when love didn't hurt, when being family meant something. Before leaving, Susan hugged me tightly. No matter what happens, I'm with you. Thank you, sister. And Ellie, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Those words sustained me for days. On the 30th of December, I received an email from Mr. Baker. Ellie, I inform you that the new owners will formally take possession of the property on the 24th of January. The current occupants have been notified. So far, they have not sought legal advice to appeal. I will keep you informed of any developments. So they weren't going to fight legally, probably because they knew it was pointless. The house was mine. I sold it. End of story. On the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, I spent it alone. I didn't go to parties. I didn't answer invitations. I simply prepared a simple dinner, put on music by Augustine Lara, and at 12 o'clock at night, I poured myself a glass of wine. I toasted to myself. To you, Ellie, for everything you survived, for everything you let go of, for everything you will build. And I drank, slowly, savouring every sip, not as an escape, but as a celebration. On the 2nd of January, I turned on my phone for the first time in 9 days. I had 43 messages, most of them from Sarah. I read them all, and in them, I saw the progression of her emotions. Mum, please, let's talk. December 27th. Mum, David says we have to look for an apartment. We can't find anything in our budget. December 28th. Mrs. Carroll says we can stay with them temporarily, but her house is small. December 29th. Mum, this is a nightmare. December 30th. I packed your things from the room. They are in boxes. Do you want me to bring them to you, or are you coming for them? December 31st. Happy New Year, I guess. January 1st. Mum, are you really going to let this end like this? January 2nd in the morning. That last message made me think. Was I ending this, or had she ended it months ago without realizing it? I replied to only one message. Sarah, you can bring my things whenever you want, but if you come alone, without David, without your mother-in-law, without anyone else, just you and me. If you are willing to do that, we can talk. I sent the message, and I waited. The answer came 3 hours later. All right, I'll come Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Saturday, the 4th of January, dawned cloudy. I made coffee, I cleaned my apartment, I put fresh flowers on the table. I didn't know if Sarah would come to fight or to talk, but I was ready for either. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. I opened it. There was my daughter, without makeup, with dark circles under her eyes, jeans and a sweatshirt, 2 boxes in her arms. We looked at each other, and at that moment, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in months. Vulnerability. Hello, Mum. Hello, my love, come in. She walked in slowly. She left the boxes next to the door. We sat in the living room, in silence, uncomfortable, painful. I poured 2 cups of coffee. I handed one to her. Thanks, she said, almost in a whisper. We drank coffee in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. Mum, I need to understand. What do you need to understand? Why did you do it? Why like this? I looked her in the eyes. Because you made it very clear to me that I didn't matter. That's not true. Sarah, please, you didn't come here to lie to yourself. You came to talk. So let's talk truthfully. She lowered her gaze. I didn't realize I was hurting you. You didn't realize? Or you didn't want to realize? She bit her lip. Maybe I didn't want to. Why? Because it was easier to please Mrs. Carroll than to defend you. Those words hung in the air. Finally, the truth. And now? I asked. What do you think now? She looked up, and I saw tears in her eyes. Now I think I made a terrible mistake. I felt something stir in my chest, but I didn't say anything. I just waited. Mum, I lost my house. David is furious with me. Mrs. Carroll blames me for everything. She says if I had handled you better, none of this would have happened. Handled. That word turned my stomach. Sarah, I'm not a problem to be handled. I'm your mother. I know. Now I know. Do you really? Then tell me, if I gave you the house back right now, what would change? She fell silent. Would you include me in your life? Would you respect me? Or would we just go back to the same thing? I don't know, Mum. Exactly. That's why I did what I did. Because I needed you to understand that my love is not infinite, that my patience has limits, and that I also deserve respect. She started to cry. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry. And there I saw my daughter. Not the woman who had hurt me, but the little girl who once hugged me and told me I was her hero. I got up, sat next to her, and hugged her. She cried on my shoulder for long minutes. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I know, my love. I know. When she finally calmed down, we pulled apart. We looked at each other. Mum, is there a way to fix this? Sarah, the house is no longer mine. I can't do anything about that. You're not talking about the house. I'm talking about us. I took a deep breath. That depends on you. What do you need from me? I need you to respect me. I need you to value me. I need you to remember that I am also a person with feelings. And I need you to set boundaries with your mother-in-law. She fell silent. I'm not going to ask you to choose between her and me, but I am going to ask you not to allow her to disrespect me. All right. All right. Yes, Mum, you are right. About everything. And David? She sighed. David is angry, but also I think he understands too. Last night he said something to me. He said, your mum did what we forced her to do, and we made her have to do it. Those words surprised me. He's not happy? No, but he understands. I nodded. Sarah, I don't want us to lose our relationship, but I also can't continue to be your half-mother. Either you include me in your life for real, or we go our separate ways. Yes, she took my hand. I don't want to lose you, Mum. I don't want to lose you either, my love. So can we start over? I looked at her intently. We can try, but it's going to take time, and it's going to require real changes. I know. And if at any point you make me feel invisible again, I'm going to walk away. And this time, it will be forever. She nodded. I understand. We hugged again. And in that hug, I felt something like hope. It wasn't total forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are enough. January passed slowly, like those months when everything is on pause, waiting for something to be resolved. Sarah and I started to rebuild our relationship, little by little, carefully, like walking on broken glass. We met for coffee on Wednesdays, just the two of us, without David, without Mrs. Carroll, without anyone else. And there, in those conversations, I began to know a Sarah I had forgotten existed. A vulnerable, honest, scared Sarah. In one of those coffee dates, in mid-January, she told me what was happening. Mum, we found an apartment. It's small, 2 bedrooms, in an area we don't love, but it's what we can afford. When are you moving? The 20th of January, 4 days before we have to give up the house. And how is David? She sighed. He's different. Different how? Quieter, like disillusioned, not with me, but with everything. With his mother? She looked at me surprised. How did you know? Mother's intuition. Sarah stirred her coffee with the spoon, thoughtful. When Mrs. Carroll found out we had to move to a small apartment, she was furious. Not with us, with you. She kept saying you were a cruel woman, that how could you leave your own daughter homeless? I didn't leave them homeless. I know, Mum. I told her that too. But she didn't want to listen. Then David told her something he had never said before. What did he tell her? He told her, Mum, Mrs. Miller did what we forced her to do. If anyone is to blame, it's us, especially me, for allowing us to treat her that way. I felt a knot in my throat. And how did she react? She got very angry. She told him he was defending the woman who had taken everything from us, that he was being a bad son, that she had done everything for him, and this was how he repaid her. And David told her that that was exactly the problem, that she had always made him feel like he owed her everything, and that he was tired of living with that guilt. I was silent, processing. Mum, it was the first time I saw David setting a boundary with his mother, and she didn't take it well. What happened? She left the house crying. She said she wouldn't come back until David apologized. And did he apologize? No. And I think that's what hurts her the most, that for the first time in his life, David didn't give in. I took a sip of my coffee. And how do you feel about all this? Relieved, Mum. I feel relieved because I finally feel like David and I are a team. Not David, his mum and me, just the two of us. I'm glad to hear that, my love. But I'm also sad because I see David suffering. He loves his mum, but he's also understanding that his mum has manipulated him his whole life. That's very painful to see. Yes, but I also think it's necessary. I nodded, because it was. Sometimes pain is the only way to wake up. On the 20th of January, I helped Sarah and David move. I arrived at the new apartment with plastic bins, duct tape, and markers. Mum, you didn't have to come, Sarah said when she saw me arrive. Of course I did. That's what mothers are for. David came out of the apartment, carrying a lamp. When he saw me, he stopped. Mrs. Miller. David. We looked at each other in silence. He put the lamp down on the floor and approached me. Mrs. Miller, I need to tell you something. Tell me. I am so sorry for how we treated you. Sarah and I have talked a lot, and I understand why you did what you did. And even though it hurt, and even though it was very difficult, you were right. His words took me by surprise. Thank you for saying that, David. My mum taught me to respect my elders, but I forgot to apply that with you, and that's unforgivable. We all make mistakes, but not all of us pay for them so dearly. Sometimes high prices are the best lessons. He nodded. I hope that one day you can forgive us. I already forgave you, David, but forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning. I understand. We shook hands, and in that simple gesture, I felt something close. Not with a happy ending, but with dignity. We spent the day packing. The apartment was indeed small, nothing compared to the house. The living room and dining room were a single space. The bedrooms barely fit a bed and a closet. The kitchen was narrow, but it was clean, and it was theirs. Without debts they couldn't pay, without feeling obligated to anyone. "What are you going to do with the furniture that doesn't fit?" I asked. "We're going to sell it," Sarah said. "The big dining room table, some bookshelves, the whole living room set. We already posted everything online." "And the table?" Sarah looked at me. "The table you gave us?" "Yes, that one. We're going to sell it, Mum. It doesn't fit here." I felt a pang in my chest. That table where I had imagined family meals, laughter, Christmases. "That's fine," I said. "It was yours. You can do whatever you want with it." But Sarah noticed my expression. "Mum, if you want it." "No, my love. I don't have space for it either." And it was true. That table belonged to a dream that no longer existed. In the afternoon, while we were resting, Mrs. Carroll arrived. No one had called her. No one had told her we would be there. She simply showed up, with high heels, a designer bag, dark glasses, as if she were arriving at a social event. "David, son, I came to see how you were." David came out of the apartment. When he saw her, his expression hardened. "Mum, what are you doing here?" "I came to help with the move." "We don't need help." "David, don't be ridiculous. Of course you need help. This is—" She looked at the building with contempt. "This is very different from what you had." "It's what we can afford, Mum." "But you didn't have to get to this. If only you had—" "If only I had what, Mum? If only I had forced Mrs. Miller to give us a house." "Don't say nonsense. It's not nonsense. You never wanted to accept that that house wasn't ours. And you put ideas into our heads. You made us believe we had a right to something that didn't belong to us." Mrs. Carroll took off her glasses. "Are you blaming me for this?" "I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you the truth." "David, I only wanted the best for you." "No, Mum. You wanted the best for your image. You wanted to boast that your son lived in a big house. You wanted to control everything. You wanted Sarah and me to live according to your standards." "That's not true." "Yes, it is. And that's why we ended up losing everything." Mrs. Carroll looked around, searching for support. Her gaze crossed with mine. I was standing next to the apartment door, observing the scene. "You," she said, pointing at me with her finger. "You are behind all this." "No, Mrs. Carroll. I'm just here helping my daughter." "You put ideas into their heads." "I didn't put anything into their heads. They made their own decisions." "You are manipulating them." David stepped in. "Stop it, Mum. That's enough." David's shout echoed in the street. Several neighbors came out to their windows. Mrs. Carroll turned pale. "David, don't raise your voice to me." "Then don't provoke me. Mrs. Miller is my wife's mother, and from now on, you will treat her with respect. If you can't do that, then you are not welcome in our lives." The silence that followed was brutal. Mrs. Carroll looked at her son as if she didn't recognize him. "Are you kicking me out?" "I'm asking you to respect my family. You are my family. And so is Sarah. And so is Mrs. Miller. And if you can't accept that, then yes, I am asking you to leave." Mrs. Carroll took a step back, her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. "Someday you will regret this." "Maybe, but not today." She turned around. She walked quickly toward her car. She got in, and she left, without saying goodbye, without looking back. David stood in the street, breathing heavily. Sarah came out and hugged him. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. He hugged her tightly, and he cried. He cried like I had never seen him cry before, because he had just set a boundary that he had been avoiding for 30 years. And that hurts, even if it's the right thing to do. That night, after finishing the move, we ate pizza on the floor of the new apartment. There was no table yet. There were no chairs, but we were together. "Mum, thank you for coming," Sarah said, leaning on my shoulder. "I will always be there for you, my love. But now, with healthy boundaries." She smiled. "With healthy boundaries." David raised his soda. "To new beginnings." We clinked our soda cans. To new beginnings. And at that moment, in that small apartment, sitting on the floor, I felt more like family than I had in months in that big house. Because family is not measured in square feet. It is measured in respect, in presence, in true love. In the following weeks, I learned from Sarah that Mrs. Carroll had not called David again, that she had completely withdrawn, offended, hurt in her pride, waiting for him to apologize. But David did not apologize. And little by little, Mrs. Carroll began to feel the weight of her own decision. In February, Susan called me. "Ellie, I have to tell you something." "What happened?" "I ran into Mrs. Carroll at the supermarket." "And?" "She's different." "Different how?" "She's alone, Ellie. Very alone. Her husband is working all day. David doesn't talk to her. And she looks sad, aged, as if all that pride was collapsing on her." I didn't feel joy hearing that, nor did I feel pity. I just felt understanding. "She chose pride over love, Susan. I know. And now she's paying the price. We all pay the price of our decisions. Don't you feel, I don't know, some satisfaction?" "No, I just feel peace." Because it was true. I hadn't done this for revenge. I had done it to save myself. And the fact that Mrs. Carroll was facing the consequences of her own behavior, that wasn't my responsibility. That was karma, that silent justice that arrives when you least expect it. In March, Sarah told me that Mrs. Carroll had tried to reach out again. She sent a message to David. It said she missed him, that she wanted to make peace. And what did David reply? He told her that he missed her too, but that things had to change, that if she wanted to be in our lives, she had to respect our entire family, including you. And what did she say? She got angry again. She said David was asking her to humiliate herself, and she hung up. I shook my head. She doesn't understand that respecting is not humiliating oneself. No, Mum, she doesn't understand. Maybe someday she will. Do you think so? Maybe, when she's lonelier, when she understands that pride is a very poor companion in old age. And so it was. Months later, in June, Susan told me that Mrs. Carroll had started going to therapy, that she had had an anxiety attack that led her to the hospital, that the doctor had told her that her blood pressure was very high, that she needed to manage her stress, and that finally, in one of those therapy sessions, she had started to see her own pattern, her need for control, her fear of losing relevance, her way of manipulating through guilt. "And has she sought out David?" I asked. "Yes, 2 weeks ago. She invited him to lunch and apologized." "Really, eh?" "Yes, Ellie. She told him she had been a bad mother, that she had smothered him with her expectations, that she regretted trying to control his marriage." "And David?" "He cried, Ellie. He cried because he finally heard the words he had needed to hear for years." I was silent, processing. "And you?" Susan asked. "How do you feel knowing that?" "I feel Calm. Don't you feel like you should receive an apology too? Maybe I will someday. Maybe not. But I no longer need it to be at peace. Because it was true. Life had taken care of putting things in their place. Mrs. Carroll had lost the relationship with her son, had lost the control she so desperately needed, had faced her loneliness, and had finally understood, not through my intervention, but through the natural consequences of her own actions. That is karma. It's not revenge. It's balance. It's life teaching you, with infinite patience, that what you sow is what you reap. And I didn't need to see her suffer to feel good. I just needed to know that justice had finally arrived, silent, inevitable, perfect. 2 years have passed since that Christmas Eve. 2 years since I made the most difficult decision of my life. And today, sitting in my small apartment, with a cup of coffee in my hands and the morning sun coming through my window, I can say that it was the best decision I have ever made. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. My relationship with Sarah is different now. It is no longer that mother-daughter relationship where I gave everything and she took without thinking. Now it is a relationship between two adult women who respect each other, who care for each other, who choose each other. We see each other every week, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just to walk in the park. We talk about everything, her job, her marriage, my projects, because yes, now I have projects. After selling the house, I had enough money left over not to worry for a while, and I decided to do something I had always wanted to do, but had never dared. I took painting classes, something that had fascinated me since I was a little girl, but that I had abandoned because it wasn't practical, because I had to work, because I had to be responsible, because I had to sacrifice myself for others. But now I paint. I'm not Frida Kahlo, nor do I claim to be. But every time I put the brush to the canvas, I feel alive. I feel complete. I feel like me. I also joined a group of women my age. We meet on Thursdays at a downtown cafe. We talk about our lives, our children, our pains, our victories. And there I discovered that my story was not unique, that there were many women who had gone through the same thing, mothers who had faded trying to please, mothers who had lost their identity along the way, mothers who had had to make painful decisions to save themselves. And in those conversations, I found sisterhood, I found understanding, I found a space where my pain was not dramatization, where my decision was not cruelty, where my story was valid. One afternoon, one of those women told me, "Ellie, you're very brave." I shook my head. "I'm not brave. I was just tired." "That's the same thing," she replied. "Bravery is not being fearless. It's being exhausted and still taking the step." Those words stuck with me, because she was right. I wasn't brave because I wasn't scared. I was brave because despite the terror of losing my daughter, I chose not to lose myself. David and Sarah adapted to their new life. The small apartment became their home. Little by little, they decorated it with care, with simple furniture, with plants, with photographs. And although it was difficult at first, now Sarah tells me that it is the place where she has been happiest. "Because it's ours, Mum," she told me one day. "We don't owe anyone. We don't have to impress anyone. It's just David and me." And that was something they wouldn't have learned if I had kept giving them everything. Sometimes the greatest love is letting them fall, so they can learn to stand up on their own. David and his mother finally found a balance. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy. But after months of therapy, Mrs. Carroll began to change. Not completely. People don't change overnight. But she learned to let go. She learned to respect. She learned that love is not shown with control, but with freedom. 6 months ago, David invited me to lunch, just him and me. We went to a quiet restaurant, and there, while sharing some pulled pork sliders, he told me something I will never forget. Mrs. Miller, I know what happened was very painful for everyone, but I need you to know something. What is that, David? You saved me. I looked at him confused. How? You saved me from becoming my mother. When you sold that house, I was furious. I felt like everything had been taken away from me. But over time, I understood something. I understood that I was living the life my mum wanted for me, not the life I wanted. And if you hadn't done what you did, I would have continued like that, trapped, without realizing it. His voice broke. Now I have a simple life, but it's my life, and that is priceless. I took his hand. David, I'm very glad to hear you say that. Thank you, Mrs. Miller, for everything, even the pain. That day I cried in my car on the way home, but not out of sadness, but out of gratitude, because finally we had all learned. Mrs. Carroll and I never became friends. We probably never will. But we reached a tacit agreement, a cold but real respect. We see each other at birthdays, at family gatherings. We greet each other politely. She no longer sees me as a threat. I no longer see her as an enemy. We simply coexist. And that is enough. 3 months ago, Sarah gave me some news. She came to my apartment one Sunday morning with a bag of donuts and a nervous smile. Mum, I have to tell you something. What is it, my love? She sat next to me. She took my hands. I'm pregnant. The world stopped. What? I'm going to be a mum. And you're going to be a grandma. The tears came before I could stop them. I hugged her tightly, very tightly. How far along are you? 2 months. I wanted to be sure before I told you. And how do you feel? Scared, excited, happy, and I want you to be with me through all of this, Mum. Of course, I'm going to be with you. No, Mum. I mean for real. I want you to be an important part of my baby's life. I want you to be the grandma I had, the one who took care of me, the one who taught me, the one who was always there. My love, you don't have to ask me. Yes, I do have to ask you, because I know I hurt you, and I know we lost time, and I don't want that to be repeated. I want my child to grow up knowing they have an incredible grandma. I hugged her again, and in that hug, I felt that everything had been worth it. The pain, the loss, the loneliness, everything. Because finally, we were going to have a second chance, but this time with respect, with healthy boundaries, with true love. Yesterday was Christmas, 2 years after that Christmas Eve that changed everything. This time it was different. Sarah and David invited me to their apartment. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Carroll were also there, and Susan, my sister. The table was small, the dinner was simple. Sarah cooked turkey, I brought my mashed potatoes, the same ones that were once rejected. This time there were no leftovers, this time everyone ate. And when David raised his glass to make a toast, he said, I want to thank everyone who is here, especially the women at this table, my mom, who is learning to love me without smothering me, to Sarah, my wife, my partner, my everything, and to Mrs. Miller. He looked directly at me. To Mrs. Miller, who taught us the hardest and most necessary lesson of our lives, who taught us that love without respect is not love, and that sometimes the most painful decisions are the wisest. Thank you, Mrs. Miller, for not allowing us to forget you, for demanding your place, for saving us from ourselves. Everyone raised their glasses, even Mrs. Carroll. We clinked, we drank, and there, At that small table, in that humble apartment, I felt more at home than ever, because finally I had what I had always wanted. Not a big house, not luxuries, not appearances, just love, true love, love with respect, love that didn't make me invisible. After dinner, Sarah and I were left alone in the kitchen washing dishes. Mum, can I ask you something? Of course, my love. Do you regret it? Do you regret selling the house? I was silent for a moment, carefully drying a plate. No, Sarah, I don't regret it. But you lost so much money. I didn't lose money, my love. I invested in something better. In what? In my dignity, in my peace, and finally in us. She wiped away a tear. I do regret it, Mum. Regret what? Having put you through all that, for not having known how to value you, for having to lose you to learn how to love you well. I hugged her. We didn't lose each other, my love. We just found each other again in a different way. Do you forgive me? I forgave you a long time ago. Now you forgive yourself. We stayed hugged in that kitchen, mother and daughter, but also woman and woman, with scars, with lessons, with renewed love. Today, as I write this story in my notebook, as I watch the sunset from my window, I realize something. Life is not fair, but it is wise. It takes from you, it breaks you, it forces you to let go. But in the end, it teaches you. And if you pay attention, it transforms you. I reached 58 years old, thinking that my life was already defined, that my role was to be a mother, only a mother, and that meant giving until I disappeared. But I was wrong. Being a mother does not mean erasing yourself, it means teaching. And sometimes, the best teaching is by example. The example of a woman who respects herself, a woman who sets boundaries, a woman who chooses her peace over the comfort of others. And that woman I found along the way, is me, Eleanor Miller, 60 years old now, amateur painter, grandmother on the way, daughter, sister, friend. But above all, woman, complete woman, woman who learned that the most important love is self-love. Because when you love yourself, you teach others how to love you. And when you respect yourself, you teach others how to respect you. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast, but it was worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of loneliness, every painful decision was worth it. Because today I can look in the mirror and recognize myself. Today I can walk with my head held high. Today I can say no without guilt. And today I can say yes without fear. If my story touched your heart, if you recognized something of yourself in me, I want you to know something. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not a bad mother for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for defending your dignity. You are human and you deserve respect. From your children, from your family, from your partner, but above all, from yourself. Because love that doesn't include you is not love. It is sacrifice. And sacrifice without reciprocity is abuse disguised as virtue. Don't make yourself small to fit into places that don't value you. Don't apologize for taking up space. Don't beg for love from those who should give it to you freely, because you are valuable, you are important, you are enough, just as you are. And if someone doesn't see it, that's their problem, not yours. Sometimes you have to lose to find, you have to let go to receive, you have to break to rebuild. And even though it hurts, even though the road is dark, even though you feel like you won't survive, you will survive, I know it, because I survived. And if I could, you can too. Thank you for listening to me until the end. Thank you for staying with me in this story. Thank you for allowing me to share my pain and also my healing. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs it, with that mother who is struggling, with that woman who feels invisible, with that person who needs to know that they are not alone. Because sometimes one story is enough to change a life. And if it changed yours, then everything I lived, everything I lost, everything I gained will have been worth it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman, a life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. May God bless you. And always remember, your worth does not depend on how much you sacrifice. Your worth exists simply because you exist. Until next time.